Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You're going to be listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast in our 20th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. 6 decades of doing great things for folks living in San Diego County, whether it's food insecurity, it's homeless, Alzheimer's, arts. They are there shoulder to shoulder. So good to have in the studio a long-time guest. It's been a while. Aaron Byzak. He is the CEO of Solutions for Change. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing great. Good to see you, Drew.
It's been a while. How long has it been?
I don't know. It's been a long time. I've been on a few times. I was trying to rack my brain.
It's yeah. We have to go through the archives.
Yes.
And there was running water when we first had you on.
There was, yes.
Yeah. That's joined by my co-host. The premier co-host, Kristen Fogel, has been doing this now for 4 years with me. She is the executive director of San Diego Writers, Inc., and I always appreciate you. You're in the co-pilot seat, so to speak.
So glad to be back.
Yeah, we're very happy to. And a relatively new co-host has been on the show with me several times, Chase Lastney. He'll be going to San Diego State in the fall. How you doing, Chase?
Good morning, Drew. Doing pretty great today.
What's your major going to be?
Business administration, going in for management.
With a minor in podcasting?
Sure should.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's good. It's big enough. Kristen, why don't you kick it off with a question for Aaron?
Yeah, let's just do what we usually do. So tell us a little bit about your mission of Solutions for Change.
Our mission is to solve family homelessness, and we do it one family, one community at a time. Homelessness is a very complex topic.
Yeah.
And it's obviously in the news every single day, and it's what I would call a complex puzzle, and we are a piece of the puzzle, family homelessness, and we do it in a very interesting way. We do it with an accountability-based model, meaning that you have to stay clean and sober in our program, and we hold you to very high standards.
Okay. And I assume you have tools to help with that process, or partners that help with that process?
We have quite a number of partners, and we have a 700-day program we call Solutions Academy.
Okay.
And so it's almost like graduate school for escaping homelessness.
Okay.
And so we bring in families. They have to meet certain criteria. They have to get clean and sober before they come into the program. So they usually go to a detox or a rehab kind of facility ahead of time. Many of the people that come into our program have lost their kids at some point because of illegal activity or drugs or whatever it may be. We have a 100% child reunification rate over 26 years.
Wow.
So 100% of the people that come into our program get their kids back.
Wow.
And that's because the people at Child Welfare Services and our community partners understand that the kids are going to be safe in our program.
Yeah.
And it's because we don't allow drugs. We inspect the facility, their apartments
Right.
every week, and we hold people accountable. And it's a different model in today's society than a lot of people are using.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the show as well, and with our good friends and Father Joe's Villages, as you know, Deacon Jim has been on the show quite a bit, and Donnie D, of course,
Right.
And everyone in this whole space really does a great job. And everyone, what I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Aaron, people really pull for each other, whether you're working with Solutions for Change or Father Joe's Villages or, Alpha Project or, anywhere down the road.
Yeah, it's a complex puzzle, as I said, and we are one piece, so there's a lot of other pieces. I think the key is, and just like with a puzzle, when you dump the box out, you have to flip everything over and look at the colors that are there. And the question is whether or not we all agree on what the picture on the front of the box is.
Right.
And so the more we communicate with each other, the more we talk, the better we're going to be able to come up with that. I talked to Donnie just the other day.
Right.
So I'm in the process right now of conducting a lot of outreach with the other providers of services for the homeless population to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're supporting them and they're supporting us as much as possible.
Right. Now, yours is a live-in aspect of it, or is there a day component of it as well?
No, there's a live-in aspect. So
Okay.
you come in, you go to what we call healing and retreat. You kind of get stabilized and accustomed to our program. Then you go into the academy. You get your own apartment. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And then gradually, as you come out and you graduate, you go into another apartment complex that we own out in the community, and then eventually to a single-family home that we own.
Wow. And that whole process is 700 days, you said?
It's around 700 days. Some people move through a little bit quicker. Some
Right.
people need a little bit extra time. Not everybody's the same.
Right. So when they're in this 2-bedroom apartment, is it they with somebody else, or is it just with their family?
Just with their family. The one thing that many of our apartments do on campus is
Right.
that they share a kitchen.
Right.
And so you have a communal kitchen between 2 apartments. But you're in there with your family. And in the healing and retreat portion, it's more of a congregate. So you have your whole family in one room while you're getting prepared, and then you get your own apartment and you kind of move through the process. But you go through parenting and communication classes, workforce development classes, things like that. And you just learn how to be a fine, upstanding member of society, and our program works really, really well.
Yeah, and I think a point that you made, and I think is really important to understand, that people have different rules and regulations. Yours is a zero tolerance, basically, to sobriety, whether it's drinking, whether it's drugs, whatever the case may be. Correct?
That is absolutely correct, and it's an interesting environment because
Right.
in society now, with the policy at the state and the federal level, they actually do not fund you if you prevent drug use in your program.
That's right.
And so you can't even say anything
Is that
negative.
called Home First? Or what's it?
Housing First.
Housing
Yeah.
First. I'm
Housing
sorry.
First
Thank
was
you.
a model that was adopted back in around 2016. Our organization made a principled stand and said, we're not going to take federal funding or state funding
Right.
if it's tied to us allowing drugs in our program, because we know that drugs are incongruent with the environment in which we've created. And as somebody, I personally grew up in a family of severe drug addiction, and it was an open thing in my family. I know that drugs in a family sows chaos, and we cannot allow that in our program. It's honestly, it's a cancer in a program that you have to eradicate.
Yeah, we're chatting with Aaron Byzak. He is the CEO of Solutions for Change. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, joined by my co-host, Kristen Fogel. She's the Executive Director of San Diego Writers, Inc., and Chase Lasney, who'll be an incoming senior at San Diego State. Chase, you have any questions for Aaron?
Nothing at the time.
Okay.
I've got a few,
Please.
if you don't mind. Yeah. So you spoke a little bit about your background, but you've had this kind of rich and varied background, and you've only been at
And
Solutions-
distinguished, I tell
and
you.
distinguished. I was about to say, and you've only been the CEO at Solutions for Change for what, 4 months now,
4
or something
months,
like that.
yes.
Which, congratulations,
Thank
that's
you. I
amazing.
appreciate it.
But can you talk a little bit about your background and how you got here?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So I came up, as I said, in a family of chaos.
Yeah.
And I was, at a very young age, I made the decision to stay away from drugs and alcohol. I've never had drugs and alcohol my whole life. I'd never even had coffee in my entire life. I just made a decision at 11. I said, boy, there's a connection between the drugs and the alcohol and the things that my parents consume and the world and the reality in which I'm living. And so if I do the exact opposite of that, the opposite will probably be the result.
Sure.
Because I was fairly competent and intelligent even as a kid, but there was no structure really in my house, so I didn't really perform well in school. I never did my homework, and I slept on the floor with my brother and a dog, and it just kind of was what it was. But I found an early career in emergency medical services. I fell into that, and actually it's a great career for people who come from chaos, because you're a professional rescuer and you are able to keep yourself calm in difficult situations.
Yeah.
And I excelled at that, but had a few early experiences, including I had heart surgery when I was 22 for the first time because I have a congenital heart defect. And my experience as a patient changed the way I looked at everything.
Yeah.
And I said, boy, I should be a lot nicer to my patients. Not that I was mean to them, but I really should be more empathetic with what they're going through.
Sure.
Which led me to asking a lot of questions, which led me to an interest in health policy. I ended up spending the rest of my time on the ambulance, putting myself through college and to study political science. And then I went to work in health policy, and I did that for a number of years. And then when I got an MBA in healthcare management and policy, and went to work for hospitals, and I was a hospital executive for 15 years and just gradually climbed the ladder. And in the process of doing so, I worked a lot with community partners, including Solutions for Change. And so I served as an advisor for Solutions for Change and as a community partner for them. And so I've been affiliated with them for about 10 years.
Okay.
And in 2023, I had another medical situation come up, and I decided to leave and do consulting full time. And so I became a consultant for Solutions for Change. So I've been with them through most of their major decisions over the last couple of years. And so when the situation arose that they had a leadership change, they asked me, somebody who was relatively familiar, who did this for a living, to step in and help them. And I think the other thing is, even though I've worked for hospitals and health systems and whatnot for a long time, I've also served on boards of nonprofits for about the last 25 years. And so including at the higher leadership levels for nonprofits. And so it's not unfamiliar territory for me.
Yeah, well, it all makes it for a really good, well-informed CEO that's got a lot of fingers, a lot of assets that you can go to after all the years you've been working with these different partners. Going back to the fact that you folks, it has to be 100% clean and sober, which means you're not going to get that federal funding, at least from Housing First, I should say.
That's right.
In that aspect
for now.
of it.
For now.
Correct. Yeah. You think there's a flip on that? What do you think?
Yeah, I know there's a flip on it. I know that the presidential administration right now is looking at allocating a percentage of the federal funding through housing and urban development towards what they call accountability-based programs like ours.
Right.
And so there's lawsuits and stuff to prevent that from happening, as there always is. Right. But we're hoping that within the coming months that there may be a release of some funding for programs like ours. And I think that, I handled health policy for a very long time. And if there's one lesson I learned in health policy is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to anything.
That's correct.
People are unique. The causes of things, the root causes of things are unique. And so Housing First may be an effective policy for certain populations. For our population, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so we need a diversity of perspectives and a diversity of funding streams for programs like ours.
Yes. I think one of the things that people ask me all the time, because they know that Kristen and I have certainly chatted with the folks in this space. Again, Deacon Jim is a frequent guest, and Donnie has been on recently and so forth. And, of course, we had Chris on quite a bit, and you in your previous world and all this. But Drew, is it the same story the whole time? I go, no, it's always a different, story on this. And the great work that Father Joe's does, they're always trying different approaches in this aspect of it. And the numbers, I think, because it's an interesting way. There is a count one day point in time. Is that correct?
There is, and I've participated in it many times.
Exactly. And do most major metros or all places, when they count their homeless population, is that sort of the model of how you count it? Because there's really no other way of doing it, correct?
That's how you get your funding. So there's an incentive to go out and count on the point-in-time count.
Right.
But that is dramatically impacted by the weather and all kinds of things. I mean, if it's raining, good luck finding people.
Right.
Because people figure out ways to squirrel themselves away in little corners and whatnot.
Right.
If it's very cold and whatnot, but, you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you go out and you count homeless people, on the streets, or what you perceive to be homeless people on the streets.
Right, exactly. But that doesn't count the ones that are don't have a home, but you wouldn't know that they're homeless because they're, maybe they're couch surfing or whatever the case may be. Correct.
That's right. Couch surfing. You have multiple families living in the same house, so they're consolidated and whatnot. And I'm fairly critical of the methodologies of how we count these things because, based on those. Methodologies, like I own a house that has a granny flat. Therefore, technically, 2 families live in my house. So technically, my children are homeless under that. And that is certainly not the case. And so, it's a complicated kind of thing. They've taken this, I would call it a blunt instrument to count people and try to draw down dollars. I understand it. You have to figure out a way to do it. Some cities have become a little bit more creative in the way they do it. They track people across the entire year and whatnot, and that I think is a better indication. And homeless populations are by definition transient populations, and so it's very difficult to somebody might be there for 364 days and then they're gone the one day that you happen to be counting.
Right, exactly. Now, getting back to your population, at any one time, how many folks are at Solutions to Change?
So we have about 100 people that are there at any given time, and about a third of those are parents, and the rest are children.
Okay, and children being under 18, that's the
under 18, correct?
Under 18 in that aspect of it. So, and they're there. He said somewhere around 700 days, but some less, but no more, right? Is that
no? Some will stay a little bit longer,
okay.
and we try to meet people where they are,
right?
And sometimes people take a little bit longer for
Sure.
uptake of some of the principles and things like that, and that's okay, And we have, amazingly, we have a lot of people on our staff that are graduates of our program.
That was my next
So
question.
we have about 65% of our staff members are graduates of the program. So they have a tremendous amount of lived experience. They've been through the program, and so they relate very well with our students that are in the program. It's really interesting because we sort of count the students that we impact and the total number of people that are in each class, each cohort that goes through. But right now we're starting to transition to a model where we're starting to engage more with our graduates and with the children of our students and our graduates, because really a lot of these problems are intergenerational.
Sure.
You have poverty and addiction and mental health issues and these things. And so you really need to stamp it out before it gets a foothold again.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe when we come back from break, Aaron, we're chatting with Aaron Byzak. He is the CEO of Solutions for Change. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, nation's longest running community podcast in our 20th year, brought to you by a mission-fed credit union. Just 6 decades doing great things in the community. Maybe we can talk to, and maybe that's not even such an animal, but maybe a day in the life. Okay, this is what someone can expect. We know it's that there are different strokes for different folks. We understand that in that area, but maybe this would be somewhat of a typical day of some Solutions to Change. We definitely want to talk about the Solutions Enterprise.
Yep.
And what you have going with that. And Aaron, you've been on the show before. We always end the second half of the show with what our listeners can do to support you.
Absolutely.
Is it volunteering? Is it money? Is it everything in between? When we return with Aaron Byzak, CEO of Solutions for Change, right after this short message.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg, Cloudcast Media. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union for 60 years plus. Mission Fed has been doing great things to support so many different causes in our San Diego County region, joined by a long-time but relatively infrequent guest on my show, Aaron Byzak. He is the CEO of Solutions for Change, joined by my co-host, Kristen Vogel. She is the Executive Director of San Diego Writers, Inc., and going to be chiming in the second half will be Chase Lastney. He will be an incoming senior at San Diego State. So right before break, we were chatting about, is there sort of a maybe typical or maybe it's an atypical day at Solutions for Change? What does that look like?
Yeah, for our students, it really sort of depends on what point in the program they are. In healing and retreat, when they first come in, it's a lot of taking care of your kids and taking care of the facilities. Because you can imagine if you have multiple families living in one house and each are in a room, the place can get a little chaotic, right? You have people that are putting their kids into, our Kids Zone kind of program, sending their kids off to school. So those are all really important things. They come in, they go into classes. And so they'll take classes throughout the day, and they'll take classes on parenting and communication and all manner of things. I teach a class, or I've taught a class there for years on life planning. So I teach a class on how to start to set short and midterm career and life goals.
That's great. So
and how to
important.
execute them.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that a lot of people really don't have skill sets in.
Sure.
And in particular, one of the things I emphasize when I'm in there is delayed gratification, which is something that is a challenging situation for people who come from poverty and whatnot. They're constantly seeking, like, I need immediate feedback on these things. And I'm telling them, hey, no, you need to put it off and delay it. You've been to graduate school. You know what delayed gratification is. You have to put it off until the very end. And then you celebrate and you say, I'm never reading a book again, right? After it's all over with,
100%.
right? 100%, right? And so... So they do that, and then as they move through the program, they move into workforce development, or what we call ERT, employment-related training. And so some of that is around the facility, some of it is off-site. So some people are going to certified nursing assistant training programs and different kinds of programs to get their sort of credential and their foothold into a career ladder. Yeah. And that's actually something that we are really working on expanding with our Solutions Enterprise program that we're redeveloping right now.
Yeah, talk about that.
So Solutions Enterprise has sort of been a revenue generating enterprise over the course of time. It was we ran a farm for a period of time for a number of years,
right.
And that was a great location because people would go and they would learn how to grow crops, and they would sell it to local schools and whatnot. And there's a metaphor there too of planting seeds and tending to the seeds and growing. That was actually dramatically impacted by COVID, particularly when schools shut down and we couldn't sell lettuce to schools and things like that. And so the farm closed several years ago. And so now what we're doing is we're reimagining it really as a workforce development engine for our organization. And truth be told, I sort of have concerns that we get people jobs. We're very good at that. But my question is, what growth do they have in those jobs after they leave our organization?
Right.
Are they truly on a career ladder where we put them on the first or second rung and they're able to climb? Or are we putting them on a step stool, right, where there's only a couple of rungs on that thing and you have a limit to how high you can go? And so Solutions Enterprise is redesigned now around forming clear relationships and partnerships with companies in our community that are philosophically aligned with what we're doing. Right now, our students, when they go into job search, is what we call it, they are sending out tons and tons of resumes online. If you or a child or a grandchild has tried to apply for a job online, you know what the problem is. The problem is it goes into a black hole.
Right.
And on the other end of that black hole is probably an AI bot that searches their resume and kicks them out and says, no, we don't want you. So that's the way it is with college graduates and mid-career professionals. Imagine what it's like for our students who are escaping the life that they've escaped.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do is create relationships where we're going old school, where I want to know that you have somebody in your HR department that I could hand my person off to and they're going to get a chance. And so we're starting to develop that as one pathway. And that's really good. And we're elevating our workforce training. So our workforce training is a good first step. We're starting to identify what is the second step, what is an elevated level of workforce training for these folks. And then a third step would be true, hopefully paid for training at other organizations. So once we've broadened their perspective on the types of jobs they can do, and then through thoughtful, intentional process, they start to narrow their focus. We can say, hey, here's our partner. You can go train with them, get paid, and get on a career ladder.
Yeah.
The second piece of it is that we have some folks in our program that are, we'll euphemistically say they're justice impacted, meaning that they've been in prison or in jail before because of their past life and whatever it may be. Those folks today have an even harder time finding jobs. And so what we're trying to do is we're going to set up an advisory board of entrepreneurs and funders and whatnot who will help them start up small businesses. And when I say small business, I mean like a micro enterprise.
Right.
Something like a pressure washing company or a moving company or whatever it may be. That way they can get out and they can work and make money and learn what it's like to run a business at the same time that they're waiting for their record to be cleared up.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing with Solutions Enterprise, and we're looking for partners and other organizations that are willing to contribute to that effort.
You know, Kristen, it's so spot on. You and I talk about it all the time on the shows here, and not lost on air, and obviously is that human interaction. And as you start seeing more people getting frustrated with the world of AI plays a great important role in many cases. There's no question about it. But it can't out-human humans, as our business associate Charles Parisi will say. But anyone who knows that in this day and age, when you're now vying, 6,000 people are vying for one $25 an hour job, it's who that person is that you know.
Yes.
And what you're teeing up is so spot on. We know this. It's been probably known this since people were walking upright, for God's sake, is that who do I know? And do I have a good relationship with Aaron or with Kristen or with Chase? Because I'm going to spend some time. If Aaron gives me a call and said, Drew, I know you have some openings in Cloudcast Media. You're always hiring folks like Ian at San Diego State and so forth. Would love for you to take a chance on someone going through us.
That's exactly right. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that warm handoff. And, I coach a lot of people who are early and mid-career and looking to step up. And I talk to people all the time, and when they get to me, they're like, I said, how many resumes have you submitted, or how many applications have you done? I've done 100. Really, how many calls have you gotten? I've gotten 2. Like senior career people who are getting 2 callbacks. Now, I sort of blame the LinkedIn easy apply button because you have 1 million people applying for jobs.
It's awful.
I just helped an organization place a CEO down in San Diego. We had 500 applications for a CEO position.
Wow.
And there's very few people who are truly qualified for CEO positions. So 500 people is incredible. And so what we're trying to do is create that warm handoff and maybe go back in time a little bit and say, hey, I want you to take this person's resume from the big stack to the little stack and get them through the door. And as long as you interview them and give them a chance, that's what I'm looking for. Yes. Because the discouragement that happens when you submit 100 and you get rejected 100 is the kind of thing that can drive you back to the old way of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, you're really not being, it's an inanimate object that's rejecting you. Not necessarily a human being in that aspect of it. We're chatting with Aaron Byzak. He's the CEO of Solutions for Change. Been in the job how many months now?
I've been in 4 months.
And that's really misleading because he's been involved with Solutions to Change for many, many years, consulting and in his previous work as well. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlossberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast in our 20th year. Very proud of it. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Joined by my co-host, his last name. He'll be a student at San Diego State next fall. Kristen Fogel is the executive director of San Diego Writers Inc. Kristen, other questions you got for Aaron?
So we've talked about the academy. We've talked about enterprise. What else are we missing? What other programs or things do we need to know about Solutions for Change?
Well, I think one of the big things that we're working on, and it starts more philosophical than it will eventually turn into an actual thing, is what we call Solutions Institute. Okay. And this is sort of the vision of Chris Megason, the founding CEO of the organization. And then that is that we would eventually become a place where other nonprofits around the country and policymakers would come to learn about our model. Mm-hmm. And that is a very admirable goal. And so as I step in, and, as you mentioned, I've been around for a while. It's not like I need somebody to tell me where the bathroom was or anything like that. But as I'm starting to dig in, I'm saying, okay, well, if you are going to teach people your model, and we do have a model, Solutions Academy is a model right now, we should be a model across the organization in our financial management, our operations, and our fundraising, and marketing, and all these pieces. And so Solutions Institute is really a philosophical adoption of an elevation of our performance. And so we're doing that right now. So we're just consistently elevating our performance across the organization. We're proving that what we do really works. Mm-hmm. We've actually adopted a new system for tracking our data. Because as you can imagine, there aren't a lot of systems that are specifically designed for programs like ours. Sure. And there weren't before. So we had to sort of hodgepodge data collection tools together. Mm-hmm. Now we have one that's really built for us. And so that's going to allow us to not only report our outcomes better, but also track and see where can we improve. And so it's a continuous quality improvement philosophy that we've adopted. And we're working to eventually become a place where people would want to fly out to us. And maybe we would raise money to provide scholarships for nonprofits to come out to us and learn about how we do what we do and how do we survive without federal and state and direct state and federal funding.
Yeah,
exactly.
Big.
So we've got about a minute or so to go. Aaron, what can our listeners do to continue to elevate the great work that Solutions for Change has done for 26 years?
Yeah, I appreciate that. We we rely on private donations. We rely on grants from foundations and other organizations to survive. That pays, pretty close to 100% of what we do. Wow. And so if you go to solutionsforchange.org, we have an opportunity to donate there. We love donations, large and small. If you preferably large, if possible, and if you would like to volunteer, we have lots of opportunities for events. You can come in. You could do resume writing and interview prep. You could teach a class for us in part of our academy. You can volunteer. We nightly, 5 days a week, we have volunteers who come in and serve food to the people that are in our healing and retreat side of things. And so we actually have organizations and churches and people that are lined up for several months out to do that very thing. But we'd love to have people help us with that.
Yeah. What's the website, Aaron?
It's solutionsforchange.org.
So promise me, as you can tell, Chris and Aaron is on his game. Great content, and you project it so well. No, shock there in that aspect. Come back and bring in, not trying to break any HIPAA laws or any of that aspect, but bring in a family that has benefited, okay? Or somebody who now works for the organization that had gone through the program, and would love to have you shout there out and talk about, hey, this stuff does work. Here's some great shining examples.
I would love to do that. We have 4,800 graduates and their children that have been through our program, so there's plenty to choose from.
We're going to be looking forward to it. And Aaron Bysak, so good to see you again. Congratulations on becoming the permanent CEO of Solutions for Change. It's only going to benefit the organization and all the clients that come through it. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, nation's longest running community podcast in our 20th year. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. And to our audience, we hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.